Welcome to another episode of The Conversation. Like we always do, we're back with you again today. Like I always state, the Conversation is just another simple platform where we invite Gambians to come and really have a conversation with one another, get to understand our dilemma in our nation. It has been 21 years of oppression, a dictator and tyrant as the leader of our nation. And we want to use the conversation as another platform where Gambians can really speak to one another, discuss the way forward, hopefully communicate to our leaders, our current and future leaders, what we have come to expect of them, and maybe even have a discussion and with our government. This afternoon, we have a good friend of mine, obviously former Armitage High School colleague, in the name of Karamba Touray. Karamba, welcome to The Conversation.
Thank you, Momodou, for the invitation, and thank you to the general audience who I was part of in your previous programs. And I want to commend you for this platform and for the energy and enthusiasm you bring to it. We've all learned a lot since you started inviting people, and it is my pleasure to be here today, and hopefully I can add to the foundation and the direction you've already set in your previous conversations with other people. So thank you very much, and as you alluded to, a conversation is an inherently important part of the dialogue that people must have to describe their situation, and then more importantly and hopefully to evolve solutions, and then to find a way to build consensus and move the public's business forward. So I'm very happy, and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much, Karamba. Obviously, you're no stranger to the Gambian struggle in restoration, in working to restore democracy in our nation. If anybody has been involved in this fight for the last 21 years, they would have heard of Karamba Touray. But needless, I always like to, just have my guests introduce themselves to that person, maybe that single person that's listening to the conversation who doesn't know who Karamba Touray is. Can you just quickly give us a quick background of Mr. Touray as we get to know him?
Very good. As you indicated, we went to Armitage together, myself and you, in the 80s, and I am originally from Georgetown there, but more generally from the area across the river. But I was brought up and born in Georgetown. I went to school there and went to Armitage, and then from Armitage I basically came down here. I went to Gambia High School for the 2-year program there, and I have lived in the United States since then. And I consider myself just your regular Joe. There is not much to me, in any kind of detail, but I have a passion for Gambia and its people. I think our value system, I think our history, and I think our diversity is a work of beauty, and is one that is worth preserving and one that is worth fighting for. So I have tried to do the little I can from 1994 up until today when democracy was disrupted, and then we've gone through this very difficult and tragic history of dictatorship and tyranny. And I have taken it upon myself to engage as a citizen in the political process, in the activist process, and the overall effort that Gambia and Gambians deserve a plural, competitive, and functional democracy, which is what I think is what has been motivating me from 1994 up until now, because the alternative, as it is plainly clear, is something that not only affects our people, but it sets the country on a course that even if you arrest the current anomaly and then you bring democracy in, but the opportunity cost of the dictatorship and tyranny is so extensive and it's so damaging that I try to spend whatever waking moment I have to look for like-minded people, to look for fellow citizens, and then to say what are our problems and what are we going to try to do about it. So essentially, this is kind of what I have tried to do. Now, obviously, we haven't gotten rid of the dictatorship, so we've all fallen short. But I take tremendous pride in the exertion of effort that I have seen others do, and that continues to inspire me to redouble my efforts when the opportunities come and when the difficult moments come, to not be discouraged, and then to not despair, and then to not be indifferent to the suffering of people that I know and people I don't know, but for a country that I love dearly with my heart.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Karamba, for that introduction. You did mention that we went to Armitage High School together in the 80s, which is very true. Before we go any further, obviously, Armitage is where all of us built that foundation that we're working on today that has made the Karamba Tourays and the Momodou Krubalys. At Armitage, obviously, we had mentors, teachers, leaders. Last week, we lost a teacher in the name of Solomon Cole, who has, played a very important part in our lives as a PE teacher. But most important, he was someone on campus that gave advice to many of us and guided us. Just wanted you to chime in there a little bit about Solomon Cole, what you remember of him, and to pay a short tribute and respect to him.
Well, very well. S.R. Cole, Solomon Rahman Cole, was the consummate public servant, and I extend my condolences to his family, to his son Arthur, and the rest of the family, Amama, and all of the other kids that he brought up. Remember, when he was at Armitage, he had other children that were not his biological children that were with him, that he brought up throughout his stay over there. We all went to Armitage as teenagers. I was a 12-year-old when I came in, but it shaped my overall worldview, so that by the time we graduated, I considered myself as somebody who had undergone profound changes, not only in the academic sphere, because we were living with 350 other people who were all different, who brought all their own characteristics, and the whole experience kind of shapes you and molds you to understand the complexity of the world, even though this is a relatively small community. But the diversity of it, and then the variety in the experiences that you have, and the different backgrounds different people bring in, gives you a taste of sort of how the real world is like. Because remember, we all had to live in close quarters, we all had to interact, we all had to compete, and then we all had shared objectives that we wanted to come in, as the school motto goes, enter to learn and then go forth to serve. So that has always stayed with me. And Mr. Cole was an integral part of the overall experience, because he gave everybody the sense that he cared about you, that he wanted you to succeed. And then those of you who were soccer players, particularly, he took you under his wings, and then showed you not only the tricks of the game, but he shaped you into disciplined athletes where you delivered for your school, for yourself, and then we all took pride on the overall product that the overall effort that he exerted for all of us. When we have PE lessons, those of us who are not, all that good, he made us feel that, for our health, we needed to be much more active. I remember, I dreaded doing the laps where you would run into town to the ferry and then coming back in. People that were much more athletically disposed, people from your part of the country, Bunka, and the other guys, they had all of the energy and the stamina. But then we all trudged along, encouraged by Mr. Cole, to be active and then to do our stretches and then to do what was right. So we commend him for the values that he has left all of us and for the good work that he has done. And I understand from the obituary that he ended up at the college, mentoring and then teaching and then providing the same kind of profound services that we all learned from him. And I think this is in essence, this is the representation of Gambia, Momodou, because our people are good people, and they care about others and what they do. Their professions and then their engagements, they always did it with dedication, and then we remember them for the lessons that they impart in us, for the value system that they imparted in us, and for the good that they taught us. Because sometimes in Armitage, like real life, things got a little bit difficult. You had to work on schedules and deadlines. You had to do your chores. You had to learn discipline. You had to excel academically. Because if you didn't excel, there was an academic weeding system that will see you thrown out of the school. So it brought out what is best in all of us by teaching us the values of hard work, the values of good ethics, the value of keeping discipline. That if you were a Muslim, you needed to make your prayers. If you were a Christian, you needed to go to church on Sunday. And that if you were there, if you were in the dormitories, you needed to do your duties in the dormitories. If you had responsibility, you needed to exercise those responsibilities over others in total. And then it also showed us, how to be patient with each other. Because living in those kinds of close quarters, sometimes you could get in the nerves of people. And I remember, you'll be in the bathroom. You know how our communal bathrooms are. Sometimes you will come into the bathroom, you don't have a soap. But then you'll sit right next to the guy who has a soap, and then one bar of soap will make the round on the shower pub, on the shower taps over there. So we shared, yes. You had to do that. And if you were a smoker, you woke up in the morning and then you were hiding the smoke, but then you wanted to get a few puffs from the guy who lit his thing in the corner over there. So those are essential values, Momodou, that I found to be useful. And I joke with my friends and colleagues here that I said I could live in Mongolia because I have learned early enough to be able to adapt and understand the other person and then try to accommodate what their concerns are and try to build consensus, because that's the best way to get things done. So Armitage for me, and I think this is probably largely true for you, was a character-shaping experience, because we spent 5 years there. And like I said, I came as a 12-year-old and I left as a 17-year-old, from a kid to sort of an early adult. And I had a lifetime of lessons, which I still apply here. Decades later, I apply the lessons in my everyday life here and the interactions that I have. So those were formative years, and I look back at them with great fun. And Armitage also has a special connection to me because my maternal grandfather, Omar Mbake, he was part of the first batch of Armitage from 1929 to 1933. Actually, if you look at you remember in the assembly hall we had the list of head boys on the board over there towards the back of the thing. You will see that his name was on the top, because they were the first students over there. And then my uncles all went, both on my father's side and on my mother's side, went to school there in the 60s and in the late 50s, early 60s, and so on. So for us, it is the place, and we all looked back at it. And I remember talking to my grandpa in his retirement, and he used to tell me how different their experience was. And then the set that came after him, who used to be the CFO of actually our Georgetown there, he was there in the early 50s, and he also would tell me his experience when he was going over there. So I have fond memories of the place, MB, and I suspect that's the same thing for you.
That is indeed, and you brought back some very good memories here, obviously, especially in the bathrooms, sharing that bar of soap, that tube of toothpaste, and that cigarette puff. Which obviously, I was a very good student. I never smoked or did anything like that. But that's a totally different conversation. Now, obviously, back to Mr. Cole. Obviously, he was not only a teacher and mentor. To me, as a father figure, I was glad to have spoken with Tato, and extend my condolences, and may his soul rest in perfect peace. Mr. Touray, moving on, you are an avid gardener. You have a love and a good eye for that green. Tell us a little bit about your gardening hobby, sorry.
Yes. Well, I'll say also that also springs from my own background. My father is a farmer. He raised cattle, and then he farmed all his life. That's all he did throughout his life. And we also had a vegetable garden at our home in Georgetown. And then as a kid, I grew up around the garden. In fact, part of our chores was watering the garden and then weeding it up and then making sure that things were taken care of. And I just had a passion for it. And then I spent all summer holidays actually farming, much more intensive farming as we know it in the conventional sense. Because when we closed school in Georgetown, my dad would literally empty the home, and then we'll go over to our village across the river in Demfai, which is where all the farms were and then all the animals were. So I would spend all of the summers over there, and I remember fun times on the farms and then going after the cattle. But on the issue of gardening, I have always liked growing things, and for me, just the wonder of tilling the soil, and then putting in the seeds, and then transplanting the seedlings, and then just see them grow and blossom and fruit, and then sharing it. Part of my best experience for gardening right now, because I grow a lot more than I can eat myself. But my friends also love, coming down to the garden and then spending time with me over there, and then we'll just kind of dig the potatoes or whatever vegetable comes up, and then kind of make the kind of open fire meals we used to do behind in Armitage, and I enjoy it, MB, and I try to do it as much as I can, the weather permitting, because I've been lucky to have pretty good garden soil, because where I live at is close to a lake, and then there is good sediment, and then and it's good all-round soil. So pretty much it's amenable to growing as much as I can. So I try to grow quite a bit of a variety. And right now what I have in my garden is an assortment of different vegetables, and I like the usual groundnuts, because you cannot take the groundnut out of the Gambian. So I try to grow groundnuts, and and then and some. I also have some fruit trees, and I raise chickens as well. So you could call me maybe a micro farmer in my little town here. Yes.
Well, obviously I see your garden pictures on Facebook. I think it's something very important, obviously, coming from a third world country where, food is very scarce, and obviously starvation all over. I think we do have a lot of soil, and, to utilize it. It's always good to see that people of your caliber not only do other things, but have also resorted back to the land and to live on the land that obviously we have. And hopefully when we all go back home someday, many of us will go back to the land and produce our own food.
Exactly.
Mr. Touray, when you say Karamba Touray, the first thing that will come is like UDP. You are clearly a UDP supporter, probably a registered member. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
As obviously one of the spokespersons for UDP, can you give us an update as to what is happening right now? We know that the chairman of the United Democratic Party, the leader, Hussein Odabo, is currently in custody with some of his executives. Can you just update us quickly as to what's happening? What is the state of UDP on the ground, the court cases that are happening over there?
Okay. I will start by just updating you about what happened today, and then we'll walk backwards from there. Now, just to give you a synopsis of the history, April 14th and then subsequently on the 16th, Gambians went out. The initial group that went out consisted of UDP members, but then there were other members also from different parties and other concerned Gambians that wanted to go out there to bring public attention and express their concerns about the issue of electoral reform. And subsequent to them coming out at Westfield, they were brutally attacked and then taken in. And one of the participants, who is also a principal youth leader in our party, Solo Sendeng, was murdered under police custody. And then Usainu and then other members of the executive, joined by other additional ordinary Gambians, then went out to demand full accountability for what was done to those people, because they were out to exercise rights that are guaranteed under the Constitution. And it is very, very important, MB, for all of us to reflect on this point. I know it sounds legalese, but it's a very important point. A constitutionally guaranteed right ceases to be a right if it is not exercisable. So that if you are not able to go out and then exercise your right to freedom of assembly, then the right is, you have forfeited that right. And Usainu and his team and everybody else that joined him wanted to go and assert those rights and then validate the principle that they were not going to forfeit their rights, because they wanted to demand full accountability for what happened to people that were acting lawfully. And then they were also subsequently swept up and brutally treated, and especially the women were subjected to something that I consider to be unforgivable, what was done to them. And this is the essence of what happened. And then since then, the government has been acting unlawfully and criminally, trying to tie them up in procedural shenanigans and then violations of every procedure you know about due process, and then just in effect holding them up it's 40 days now. And today what had happened, the government had tried to move the second group, not Usainu's group, but the second group, to move their trial to Mansakonko. Now, their trial itself is unlawful, but then they wanted to add another layer of illegality to that by moving the jurisdiction from where the law says it needed to be heard to a place of their choice, which is unlawful. And then the only reason they wanted to do it was to kind of scatter the defendants and then drain their legal representation by obligating those people to travel. And at this point, it's very important to state that all of the lawyers, and then this is a very deep bench of lawyers, are providing their services pro bono because they are outraged at what is happening to the people and to the country. So what was decided by both the defendants and the party and the lawyers was that they were not, under any circumstances, going to accommodate an additional layer of illegality to what the government was doing by agreeing to go to Mansakonko. So it was communicated to the Chief Justice that there is no way that they will go. And then if the government insisted on taking them to Mansakonko, they were going to do the trial on their own. They will offer no defense, and then they will not honor the thing by attending it. So for some reason, the government decided not to go through with their own threat. So those people were scheduled to have been taken to Mansakonko for some kind of a hearing or a continuation of the hearing, but that was aborted by the government. And then it is clear to them that is what is going to stand indefinitely, that anytime they attempt to move the jurisdiction from where the law prescribes it to be heard, that there will be no honoring of that, regardless of what the court orders. That's the first part. And then in Banjul also, Husseinu's team was there, and then the lawyers were arguing 2 points. The first point was that the act under which they were being charged, that the government has filed the charges, which is the Public Order Act, is in itself unconstitutional because it violates the provisional entrenched clause in the Constitution that says every Gambian has freedom of assembly. So they wanted the court, because this was a constitutional matter, they wanted that aspect of it be sent over to the High Court for adjudication, because the whole trial is based on an act that the lawyers believe is not a lawful act, even though it was passed by the rubber stamp parliament. You cannot have, on the one hand, an entrenched clause in the Constitution that says every Gambian citizen has a fundamental right of freedom of assembly. That right could not be, and a fundamental right in a Constitution trumps whatever act Parliament can pass. But then that was one issue before the judge. The second issue was, under the trial procedures of the Gambia High Court, if a judge is removed or replaced, the new judge then has to start the trial afresh. He could not proceed with the trial at where the other judge left it, because for all obvious reasons, that is the trial procedure. Now, these were the two things that were put before the replacement judge today, who is also another mercenary judge, and then she ruled against the defense on both those cases. She said she was not going to forward their motion for constitutional interpretation, and she was also not going to start the trial afresh. She was going to continue from where the judge that recused himself did. So at this point, I want everybody to understand that the reason why this trial is continuing is not to provide any kind of justice, because it's a criminal proceeding. The government is the one committing the crimes. These people are completely and totally innocent. But the lawyers are trying to put the system itself on trial. That is what this whole defense is about. And I know sometimes people get very frustrated, and then they see attempt to really lock these people up by procedure. But the way you fight these national liberation battles, MB, is you have to use multiple fronts. The criminal proceedings that they are using, you need to put that on trial by showing, blatantly how corrupt and how unlawful the whole proceeding is, and how corrupt and how unlawful the officers of the court, particularly the judges and the prosecutions, are acting, because the court is not enforcing its own orders. Remember, the court ordered that they needed to have family visits, they need to have food, they need to have medical attention, but the prison officials are flouting that. And then when the lawyers tell the judge, look, you are issuing your own court, and then it is being flouted, what are you going to do about it? They don't do anything about it. So all of that is to put the system on trial, not accepting the validity of the trial, but then putting the system itself on trial. So that is where we are right now, Andy.
Right now. Thank you so much. And I asked that question, and most people would say, why? I mean, most interviewers would say, well, keep asking questions, but it's very important, and the goal of this conversation is to let people break it down, listen to you, just start it from April 13, 14, and bring it all the way up to date. That gives us a clear indication as to what is happening. Like you said, the tactics that are currently being used, and thank you so much for that update. Now, Karamba, Solo Sandeng is dead. Ndogo Njai came out and told us the things that happened. And the average person who has any type of sense will understand that not everything was revealed on that document that Ndogo Njai, the document that was released. We suspect some of these women have been raped, and the worst is happening to them. The people that are doing this are Gambian people. You are a religious person. The average Gambian is a very religious, God-fearing person. It is an illegal act, but there's also an element of what's happening being morally wrong and against the Islamic or Christian teachings. You're someone who is a devoted Muslim. Talk to that young man that is locking these ladies in a room, beating them up, the person that killed Solo Sandeng, or possibly a future young man within us who's listening to conversation, to tell them that it is not only illegal, but it is wrong against any type of teachings or human belief.
Exactly. And it tells you just how far we have come. Remember, MB, this is a country where we pride ourselves in our value system, our sense of innocence, the empathy we have for each other, our sense that somebody's life, somebody's liberty is sacrosanct. This is how we grew up. To have a situation where, and you are absolutely right, the abuse, all of it, is being done by bona fide Gambians like you and I, who have taken leave of their conscience, who have abandoned the core and the fundamental teachings of whatever faith they profess, who also are very, 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 very poor students of history, who don't understand that whatever abuse you mete out to people, especially in an organized fashion, in which you can be identified, and they all will be and are being identified, that responsibility is something you cannot escape in this world, and then suddenly responsibility is something that you cannot escape before Allah, whatever your faith or your professed faith is. So that our country has come to a position where all of the things that we cherish, all of the things that we value, all of the things that we think make us distinct and special are being systematically and consistently eroded because of the institutional criminality that has become the order of the day as a result of the person who is responsible, who has fiduciary responsibility over the entire nation, who stands up and publicly and shamelessly and viciously threatens and actually delivers on his threats on people who have no defense against what he is doing, people who have no power over him, and more importantly, people who are completely and totally innocent. You understand? So to come back to your question, what I tell the abuser is that what you do will offer you no benefit. It is sadistic. You may think you are doing it for career advancement, but it is a career that will have no barakah. You will not be successful at what you do. You will pay the price because there has to be accounting for criminal misconduct. Those who take life, Momodou, those who violate the sanctity of women, those who abuse the elderly, those who run religious people out of their mosques, those are people who cannot escape the wrath of the Gambian people. And suddenly they will have to stand before Allah when it is all said and done. And it will be all said and done. The dictatorship will end. The tyranny would end. But the guilt and the violence and the abuse they have carried on their conscience will eat at them, and they will pay a price. No one throughout the history of the world has ever successfully been an enforcer of tyranny and violence and live to tell the story or have a happy retirement thereafter. It doesn't happen. We have seen 90-year-olds being dragged out of nursing homes and then being held accountable for the crimes that they have committed against their fellow people.
Yes.
We are a forgiving people, MB. We are religious people. But we also know that we have a responsibility to each other It is unforgivable for somebody to countenance the brutal abuse of innocent people who have not done anything wrong, who have only asserted what they know to be their rights and what the abusers know to be their rights. And then the abusers are not going to prevail in this struggle. This is a very long and difficult struggle, but inshallah, history is on our side, justice is on our side, and time is on our side. It may look very hard, and then the abusers may look all powerful in their own eyes. They are not really powerful. Now, come on, MB. Who takes a woman and abuse her and then project that as a source of strength? Or who takes an old man? Or who takes a defenseless person who has no arms, who is tied up, and then you murder him in cold blood? That is not chivalry. That is not courage. That is barbarism. That is evil. That always catches up to the perpetrators, no matter how long. And I pray to God that for these people, it is on the shortest of all leashes that we prevail, that we bring justice to our country, that we bring peace to our country, that we bring freedom to our country, that Gambians will never, ever sit in perpetual fear of their own government, that policemen and policewomen that they buy uniforms for, that they give guns to, that they give a salary to, will turn around and shoot them and drag them like merchandise and throw them in the back of trucks and abuse elderly women and kind of just leave everything that we know as human beings aside and become this. So to that young person, I tell him, repent. Also remember that your time will come. And those who think they have this, you don't have to do this. You don't have to abuse people. You don't have to shed blood. You don't have to put your people in a position where you will bring chaos and anarchy in your own country, because it will not end up well for you. So stop it. Recollect your own morality. Draw from what you know. Know that your life is temporary in this world. Be decent. Be humane. Be honest. And then be just. Gambians are not asking for much, MB. What you want is what I want. A free country where people are able to go about their businesses and then they don't have a merciless government hunting them down and then dragging them from their families and then ruining them and destroying their lives and killing them. That is not a lot to ask. And we must fight to restore that, because without it, we don't have a country.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Karamba. It's very important to obviously remind our people, because sometimes this whole power stuff, people get drunken off of this whole power thing that's happening back home, and it is important just to stop for a minute and sometimes just talk to one another, especially these people, like you said. How can you call yourself a man when you handcuff a woman? Or an old man, take him into a room and beat him up and project that as a power or as authority. But it's very important for us to continue to talk to our young men and women that are doing this abuse, because I was one of the few at the beginning that believed that maybe I was using foreigners to do this, because I couldn't imagine a fellow Gambian doing that to another Gambian. Yes. And obviously, I've been proven all of this are coming, people that, some of them are family, some of them are former schoolmates and classmates, and they are out of us. They are brothers and sisters. And, we just have to take the time to tell them that what they're doing is wrong, it's cowardly, it's not only illegal, but it is unethical. And someday they're going to have to pay for it, like you said, either in this world or hereafter. But thank you so much for that, in-depth, breakdown. Karamba, 21 years, a lot has happened. Everybody knows what's happening in the country is wrong. Finally, the Gambian people rose up. They spoke, demonstrations. The state has obviously somehow managed to quiet down the demonstrations a little bit. It looks like things are getting back to normal. How do you feel? What can you tell the people? Because sometimes, like you said, this is a long fight. When you fight it for so long, when the demonstrations were going on, we were so close, and all of a sudden, the president goes on tour. We see the crowds, his birthday bash, spending millions of dollars. Speak to that person that is like, man, how long is this going to take? To remind them of what we're in, to continue the fight. Because you've been in for a very long time. How do you find the stamina, the courage, the energy, the motivation to continue fighting for the belief that someday this will end, and the only way it will end is not to give up?
Exactly. And I think it is very, very important. And I'll try to quote one wise man who said, freedom is the very essence of man or a human being. And some people will go to great lengths to achieve them. What is happening in our country is a deliberate, a willful, and a violent attempt to seize all of our freedoms. And as long as there is a Gambia, there will be Gambians who are willing to fight to regain their freedom. Now, it is not easy fighting to regain your freedom, because when a tyrant seizes your freedom, he wants to do three things. He wants to maintain the seizure. He wants to instill fear in you so that you don't summon the courage to demand your freedom. And then he also wants to project a sense of inevitability. And ultimately, all three strategies fail because they contravene the very nature of man. Yahya Jammeh believes that he has absolute control over the Gambian people because he reads us as a people who are unwilling to fight sufficiently for anything beyond our own parochial defined interest. You understand? And I don't believe this to be true, because I have seen people who have staked it all, and then they only did it not for anything for themselves, but then they did it because they were motivated by the plight of others. If you ask me what keeps me going is that one person that I know who is in the Gambia there, who does not like what is happening, who is rolling his sleeve and then is trying to do something about it. It is my duty to stand with that person, because I agree with him what is happening in the country is not right. And I also agree with his disposition, which is to do something about it. Part of the reason why the dictatorship and the tyranny has endured is that an unhealthy number of our citizens are not similarly motivated. They don't like what is happening, but they don't dislike it sufficiently to warrant them to risk anything to solve it. So that they want everything else to be done by somebody else, and then they will not act affirmatively in any capacity. But those are not the people why we wake up every day and fighting. We are waking up and fighting about the person I told you previously, which is this regular Joe, regular Samba, regular Balde, regular Pate who is in Basse, who does not like what is happening and who has fought consistently to try to make a difference. Those are the people, and then that is the majority of the Gambian people. Now, the nature of dictatorship is such that the road to galvanizing all of those people, sometimes it gets messy. Sometimes it falls victim to tactical errors on even the part of people that are well-intentioned. You could make errors. The politicians make routine tactical errors. We, the activists, we make routine tactical errors. Ordinary citizens also make errors. So that the galvanization is where we have fallen short. But it's not for lack of trying. It is not for lack of trying. The duty of a citizen, Momodou, is to take it upon yourself to want to be part of the solution. Once you define the problem, you must try to exert yourself to look and constantly come for a solution. And you must also convince yourself that it is not an easy business. If it were easy, it would have been done. People have fought for generations to free themselves. People have fought for centuries to free themselves. People have fought for brutal battles in very short ones to free themselves. So either way, there is a cost associated with this thing we call freeing ourselves. But there is no mistaking that it is the ultimate direction of every right-thinking Gambian. Now, we need to recognize that some people simply don't care. There is not, Yahya Jammeh could slaughter 10,000 people on the streets of Banjul and Serakunda. There will be some Gambians who will come and then jump over the pools of blood to go and look for a loaf of bread. They wouldn't care. That is also true. But again, those are not the reasons why you have a country. They are not the reasons why you make a country work. They are just there. So let us always have people at the back of, and then the people you see on television going to the jamboree or running around as part of a rent-a crowd and all of that, that is not the crowd for which you are fighting. Those are just sort of misguided people who have a lot of time on their hands, and then who really nothing really depends on them. Even for Yahya, they are just kind of accessories to whatever his vanity of the moment is. The people that matter is the people that motivate you and I. I once saw a person from Nyome. This is a sort of an elderly guy. He actually had leprosy, but then he had no fingers. But this guy, in his village, he took it upon himself to build a small, what he called a bureau. For the political parties, when they come, they can sit over there and then they can have a sort of like a way station. He didn't do it just because he had any personal affinity for Usainu. He did it because he thought he had a duty in a functional way to make the political process work. How can you let that person just wallow on the vines and then say, well, you know, I really don't care? You cannot. And it is not the mark of an honorable person to not care what happens. What happens to people in Basse should burden all of us. What happens to people in Sarengai should burden all of us. What happens to people in Kiantankula should bother all of us. What happens to every single Gambian, wherever they are, should be our responsibility. We are there for each other. So the fight is one that is predicated on the principle that we are one family and we deserve a good functioning country that is free, that is democratic, that is peaceful. That is not in perpetual threat of violence by a tyrant. That's why we have no choice but to fight. And to fight, and to fight, and to fight. And when we fight, we will win. We have lots of opportunities that are lined up. The entire world public opinion is on our side. Entire. Wherever you go, there is a strong belief that the Gambia deserves better. We need to take back our position in the family of nations. We need to have an economy that is functional. We need to find a situation where we don't lose our young people in the high seas and in the desert. There is no disagreement on that. But it is not who is going to deliver that. It's us, the citizens. The foreigners will give us goodwill. They will give us political support. They will give us diplomatic support. They may give us financial support. But then the grit and the sweat and the blood is one that we have to shed, we the citizens. So that, yes, let us remain engaged, Momodou. Let us not be discouraged. And then also let us bring what is best in people.
Thank you. Thank you. You mentioned we will give blood. Many will die. Some will never get to see freedom. You also did mention that in this fight, tactical errors are made. Yes. Karamba, looking back, yes, what do you think UDP could have done different from what is happening today?
Well, are you talking about a longer historical view or just the current issues that we are facing? I'm trying to understand
the
your question.
The current issues, because when Solo was arrested, when Solo obviously was arrested, killed, Ousseynou found it within himself. He couldn't morally just sit home. He had to get out. And for once, he did something that everybody wanted. Now he's in jail for, I believe, 40 days.
Yeah.
Looking back now of everything that transpired from the time that Solo got arrested or from the time Ousseynou got arrested, could UDP have done something different, or should they have done something different looking back? What or did they move?
Well, clearly, yes, clearly, Solo and then by extension, Ousseynou, they all did what all of us should do, which is you have a situation and you have a grievance, you do something about it. Now, remember, when Solo went, he took it upon himself with like-minded other people. This was not something that UDP had tabled and sanctioned.
Ousseynou never knew about this.
No, Ousseynou never. I didn't know about it. I never knew anything about it, and Ousseynou didn't know anything about it, and because Solo acted with other like-minded Gambians to make this point, so that once it was made, and it was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do. Somebody needed to go and then assert the proposition that electoral reform was needed, and it needed to be done in a timely fashion, and then if it was not done in a timely fashion, people needed to raise hell. You understand? But when he did it with, it had a national character to it. You understand? And then part of what motivated Ousseynou is a sense that when rights are not exercisable, they cease to become rights. And then too many of our rights have been seized. It was the time to throw the gauntlet. This is what motivated him. And this is what motivated everybody else that went. And this is the question before the whole country. The question before the whole country is, do you want to have a country where you become subjects and you become slaves, and then you are not able to assert any of your rights that are enumerated in your own constitution? If the answer is yes, then you can just sit down and do nothing. If the answer is no, then you need to stand up and do something. This is the essential question before the country. Now, is the entire country coming out and then showing solidarity? No. Should they? I think they should. You understand? But that does not take from the validity of the fight, and that does not take from the morally commendable position that these people have sacrificed blood and sweat and tears to validate for all of us. So if there is anything, I would urge people to say, what is your battle? What do you want? You understand? If to the extent that we've all made errors, it has to be because we are not engaging in a much more robust fashion for the government to hear from us, because Yahya has already known that fear as an instrument of control and co-option is no longer useful. You understand? But that does not mean he's not going to try to instill fear and exert more violence. He will probably kill more people before all of this thing is said and done. But the fight that is started, MB, we have no choice but to prosecute it to its logical end, which is to end the tyranny and get rid of this guy.
Thank you. I was just trying to see, obviously, looking back now, could they have done different? But like you said, it got to a point where Ousseynou just had to get up and do the right thing, because, I mean, the madness has to stop somewhere. Somebody had to challenge, and I think this is the beginning of the end, if you ask me, in the fact that now Gambians can openly express themselves. I have friends in the Gambia right now that are clearly telling me that people, the level of fear has diminished quite drastically, because people can now openly sit and really talk about their feelings against the government, although there's still a little bit of fear over there, in the sense that some of these military people will really come on you and just arrest you without even the government knowing it, and the next thing you know, you're dead. But Karamba, I'll be very honest in this case. When Ousseynou, if anybody told me that if Ousseynou was arrested for simply demonstrating and the nation doesn't rise, and I mean that life going back to normal, I was with the true belief that when Ousseynou gets arrested at any point, that all the opposition leaders would rise and stand with him, not only because that he's a opposition leader, but he's a decent citizen who had called for peace and somebody who respects the Constitution and the rule of law. I, for one, I am very disappointed that these opposition leaders have not spoken up, fought openly, and demonstrated for Ousseynou to be released, because we all know he didn't do anything illegal, but he's been detained there. What is the UDP feeling, and what is your personal feeling? Thoroughly talk to the Gambian people. How do you feel in the fact that the other opposition leaders are sitting, Ousseynou is in jail for 40 days for not breaking the law, and Yaya has personally just decided to just keep him in jail, and we have refused to do nothing about it? That citizens have come out, but our leaders, the other leaders, have refused to come out.
Yeah, I mean, and I appreciate your question very much. And I think not only you, but quite a few Gambians, or a large number of Gambians, have similar feelings. That what is on the table? What are we trying to do? What are all of the political parties trying to do? And I will tell you, personally, I was not surprised, because I have a very long history and something of institutional memory of how some of the political parties operate. And I am absolutely unsurprised that they have taken the positions that they have taken. They have no history of meaningful collaboration for the greater good. We've tried, and trust me, I am a veteran in this. We've tried, in the best of circumstances, to try to see what is the best way to get the public's business done. I mean, I'm talking about when everything is fine and dandy. It's just a question of sitting around a table and then working on the modalities of how to cooperate and get the greater good done. We have never been successful at it, ever. And then there's a reason for it. Fundamentally, some of the parties have a vision of Gambia that is not reconcilable with anything that is close to common sense, or anything that is practical, or anything that is doable. But then they've convinced themselves of it. And in politics, as in religion, there is no compulsion. You cannot successfully recruit somebody into a fight he does not believe in. It cannot be done, despite our best wishes, despite our desire. It can't be done, because they are not disposed to fighting that kind of a battle. Now, because they put a premium on the validity of whatever solutions they have. It is up to the Gambian people to then, either reward them or punish them for whatever positions they take. I, as a member of the UDP, I was not counting on most of them to be supportive of this effort or any other effort. You understand? Not now, not in the future, and then not ever. These people, they are marinating in their own sauce, and then they have their prescriptions. And Gambia is the only place where I see political parties and politicians publicly and persistently and stubbornly stifle public opinion. They think that the relationship is one-on-one, where they will prescribe solutions to you. You either take the solutions or you leave it. Ordinarily, politicians and political parties are subject to public pressure, public influence. You understand? Within my party, and then I take a lot of pride within UDP in the deliberative nature and the democratic nature of how opinions are formed. Sometimes I win arguments, sometimes I don't win arguments. Sometimes I disagree with the leadership, sometimes the leadership disagrees with me. But then there is a culture of back and forth where we can move positions, we can amend positions, we can influence the political actors. And not only people within UDP. You as an activist or a group affiliated with you, you could call and pressure the UDP to do something, because that has to be the nature of democratic exchange. Sadly, other political parties don't have that kind of culture. And it would have been good if we all spoke with one voice and fought this battle, because what is on the table is not a UDP thing. Ousseynou is not there because of UDP. He is there because of the Constitution. He's there because he knows that we are at our wits' end with tyranny. We need to stand up and fight. Now, the only people that will join him in that fight is the people that believe that to be the current situation. But some of the political parties believe that, they can walk along the margins of this very flawed dictatorship, and somehow they are kind of relevant, and they will be part of the national conversation. And to them, that is the beginning and that's the end. So the kind of motivations you have, or I have, or other people have, does not resonate with them. And you cannot influence them because they will reject what you propose outright. You understand? And then the few people that are around them they are sold on the program, hook and sinker. And those people are also very minimalist in their approach. They are not looking for transformation or overthrowing the system. They want to walk around the margins. So, am I surprised? No. Am I disappointed? Not really, because there is a history here. They have their ways, and they will cling to their ways. They don't have a culture where they accept that public pressure and then the fierce urgency of now may require that we change our overall approach. It doesn't happen for them. And then and then they don't even court people. So this whole, bogus argument, MB, that there is somehow a big difference between us in the diaspora here and then the actual voters on the ground. It's not true. It's baloney. There is no difference between the way I think and the way my brother and my neighbor think in TRR. How do I know? Because I'm in touch with them. You understand? So there is no difference. I think it's just somebody's way of trying to say, you just got to leave me in my own little corner. I don't want you to bother me. I don't want you to impress me. If you have a little bit of money, give it to me. If not, be quiet. This is what I'm going to do, and then just leave it at that. It's a very dark moment for democratic pluralism in the Gambia. Not all of the opposition. I commend OJ for coming and then showing up, and then for participating, and then other independent actors, Mrs. Tambajang and all of that. But those, you've got to get the thing very clear. The game plan is not the same, and that's why you cannot reconcile it. Even if there was no crisis, you couldn't put together a coalition because of the same fundamental fissures that I just told you about. If there is nothing happening, even if it is a full functional democracy, let's say for elections, let's do this because we need change. Do it. The best of circumstances. Not to mention, look at sort of their own public commentary on what is happening. It's asinine what they are saying. So looking at what some of these politicians are saying, do you have any faith that you could recruit them in bloody street battles to fight for the soul of the country? They will not, and I don't think we should bother with them. Just let's try to galvanize like-minded people and fight. Success is not guaranteed, but there is honor in fighting a good fight. That's my view.
Indeed. Karamba, you said it well. This is one case when I think about the Ousseynou case, and obviously this interview and entire conversation is about it. I get lost for words. I honestly, whenever I think about Ousseinou's dilemma, if I were a betting man, I would have lost big time, because I thought if Yahya touched Ousseynou, that would have been the end of his regime. And
to help you answer that, MB, I was going to ask you, why did you think? I mean, because point to one thing in the history of all of these political parties and the political actors. What is there in the history that tells you that if Ousseynou came out, or even they killed him, that any of these guys would fundamentally change their direction? What is in the history that would convince you of that? I think you are just going by the nature of the Gambian to say that. I think just human decency would motivate them to do that, I guess. But there is nothing in the history. And I tell you, I worked very hard to bring these parties together. I leaned on my party a lot. If you ask Musa Jeng and Banka and all of them, I mean, we worked so hard because I was nursing those same sort of basic decent arguments that at the end of the day, we got to be able to make a deal. it's impossible. These are not people anybody on the face of the earth could deal with. No one. You could bring in Ban Ki-moon, he couldn't make them do the right thing. So for me, I don't want them to be forcibly recruited in a fight they don't believe in. And they wouldn't anyway, because they have a history of spurning everybody. Do you have any influence on any of these people? It's just that's what it is. But sorry for that digression. But I just wanted to tell you that there is nothing in their history that suggests that you could collaboratively advance the public good with them. None.
Yeah, but you're right when you say there's no history there. But to me, the way I looked at the whole Ousainou and Khalifa, the leadership in the country, was that looking at Ousainou as an individual, not as a political leader, the fact that he is a respectable citizen, a senior citizen, someone who has always called for calm, someone who respects the Constitution, the rule of law, a senior citizen, someone that lived in that country. If he had committed a crime, I can understand. But I don't understand, and I never thought that a responsible Gambian who had come out publicly asking for votes to lead a country would be mute when an individual, or especially a leader like Ousainou Stride, is being abused. And that is what I based my argument on. I thought, if anything, not only for common decency, but the simple fact that he hasn't done anything wrong, the simple fact that you're all fighting for the same thing, and for 21 years we all know that what is happening in the country is wrong. Thousands have been killed, people raped, thousands in jail. And you would just think that when something wrong happens to the average person, you can argue that you cannot represent everybody. But when a leader who has practiced law, defended people in that country, a senior citizen, is illegally detained, that the decency in every leader in that country would kick in and they would rise up. That was what I was hoping for, but that never happened. But like you said, there was no history there.
No.
Karamba, you are definitely a UDP person, but each time we hear you on the airwaves, you sound pretty neutral. And like you said, some of us know some of the pressure that you put on the UDP folks to have an open dialogue and even try to make a deal. You're very positive, even when things are not looking good, like in the current situation.
Yeah.
How do you balance that? Help me. I'm somebody who is in this struggle, and there's good days, there's bad days. Yeah. But you sometimes come across very neutral and independent. Explain to the person that is in that corner and refusing to come to the middle to negotiate. Help them understand the importance of getting out of their trenches and understanding the purpose and the importance of coming together to end this dictatorship, not only to get Yaya out, but to get our country back and stop the bleeding, the killing, the whole migration that's happening, and just the general abuse for 21 years. People cannot even come out and speak their mind. To that person that is so entrenched in their corner, talk to them and show them the importance sometimes just acting like Karamba.
Exactly. Like I said, and I think it all comes back to the beginning of our conversation. I believe that consensus building, especially in a country that is facing an existential threat, you need to work with people, and then the only way you are going to work with people is you have to take positions that allows for consensus building, because if you take maximalist positions, you are going to be stuck in your own little corner. You understand? We all need each other to quickly solve this problem. You understand? So that I have always advocated within the party that we needed to go out of our way, no matter how difficult it is. We needed to go out of our way to ensure that we reach out to people, to ensure that we explain what we are trying to do adequately. And then also, even to people who are not going to give us the benefit of the doubt no matter what, it is our duty to go and court them. You understand? Most of the politicians in the Gambia don't understand the value of courtship in politics. You've got to court the voters. You've got to court public opinion. You've got to explain your positions, and then sometimes you will get pushback from people. You need to acknowledge the pushback. You understand? You cannot, it is not a doctor-patient relationship where you have a prescription, you take it. That is what has calcified and paralyzed our politics. You understand? Some of the people in the political game are sort of, it's like they are frozen in amber. You understand? You cannot move them for the good of the people. You understand? I don't have to be best buddies with you, MB, but we can work together. I don't have to be best friends with anybody, but we can still work together if we agree on the parameters of what needed to be advanced. You understand? And I have always believed that if Gambians are, we are not harsh people, and we don't like extremism of any kind. We are moderate people who want to get along. That's our general disposition. This whole idea of harshness and brutality and all of that is alien. That's why we freak out about Yahya Jammeh. We don't know all of this violence and bloodshed and making it a zero-sum game, that people needed to be run out of the country. People needed to be run out of their mosques. People need to have their lives destroyed. This is not our nature. We've always been competitive in one regard or the other, but then we always respected the humanity of the other person. I have always believed that when we come together, it inspires the rest of the country. You understand? When it looks like everybody is trying to coalesce around common agenda, it makes people excited. They will come forward, and then they would want to stake something, they will want to risk something, and then they will want to put something on the table. But alternatively or conversely, if it looks like, there is bitterness, and then there is division, and then there is a total unwillingness to change, then it discourages people. And then it also allows a large number of people who are not inclined to try hard anyway. It gives them a perfect excuse. Why should I bother? Because the hard truth is that most people are looking for the least opportunity to do anything. But if we work together and then we maintain a positive disposition, we motivate others, and then we give less room for people that are trying to shirk their responsibility to do that, at least not conveniently. You cannot force people. And part of our tragedy is that we have the politicians of the period that Yahya Jammeh has been there. There have been some few good ones, but generally we've been stuck with the worst politicians any generation can imagine. The generation of our fathers and our grandfathers, they competed fiercely. You understand? But then they were able to make coalitions, they were able to make things work. You understand? And then they were able to evolve a system that allowed people to fiercely compete. If you didn't win, at least you could go, but then they didn't run you out of buffet or from anywhere else. Yeah. But now we've got to go back to our roots, which is decency, which is doing something, which is remaining engaged, which is not looking for short answers also, MB. These things take time. They are difficult. We should be patient, but we should also understand the urgency of what needs to be done. We should not squander our opportunities. If the world opinion is on our side, we need to find a way to harness that and then change our predicament. And only us, the citizens, can do it. So what I would encourage everybody to do is, please remain engaged. Do not be discouraged. Do not look for easy answers. Do not say, well, Mr. X didn't do it, so I'm giving up. If Mr. X doesn't do it, okay, acknowledge it. Don't bury your head in the sand. But then you try to let that be a force multiplier for you. Be more motivated, and then work with like-minded people. Like-minded people, even if their numbers are not big, one philosopher once said, transformations in society are driven by what he calls the intense minority. That is the people that are fully engaged, that are looking forward, that believe in what they are doing. If they do it and then they persist, they will win. And then the larger ones who really are not going to go into the trenches will come along. Those are just come-along type people. But the rest of us have to roll our sleeves. If it is hard, we work harder. If it is harder, we work hardest. That's what we need to do. And that's what we are winning. It's at a glacial pace, and sometimes we get our setbacks, but there is no question. that Yahya Jammeh has in his hands the fight of his life. And he's going to fight hard. He's going to fight nasty. He's going to kill our people. He's going to jail our people. He's going to rape our women. He's going to have babies suffer. But at the end of the day, he cannot win this battle because he is fighting against determined citizens who are looking and concentrating on justice and freedom. That is his biggest enemy, and then he can't win.
Thank you so much, Karamba. It has been a long hour of discussion, very important. I really wanted you to, because whenever you speak, you make a lot of sense. And this is why I invited you to the conversation, to sometimes just not be interrupted, because the radio shows don't sometimes do us justice because there's not enough time to really express ourselves. And this is part of what is motivating me to really bring people here, to just let them speak and let the people take the time to really listen and understand what is at stake here. It has been a long fight, a very difficult fight. Recently, we've seen some of our colleagues sentenced, some up to a year, others up to 6 months, the likes of Bankamane, very decent people that have acted out of frustration. And this is what happens in a dictatorship, when you don't let people speak their mind, when you take people's freedoms away. They act desperately. And when they took arms and went over there to forcefully change the regime, something that many of us don't agree with, but we support them, they're going to jail. What do you have to say to these people that have given it all, and to the future that are coming on board into this fight, to understand that, yes, you will serve prison. Yes, you might be killed. Yes, you will be attacked, like many of us attacked daily. But tell them also that it is worth it. And tell Bankamane and that son of his that might listen to this recording in the future, that would question, why did my father go to jail?
Very well. I think honorable men, all of them, and I pay special tribute to the fallen heroes who did not make it out of the battlefield. We pray that Allah would grant them Jannah. We pray that Allah would give patience and succor to their families, and we honor and we respect them for what they did, for the love of country, and for the arboreum they have for injustice, for abuse, and for violence. They did it for us, and we will never forget what they set out to do. We are forever in their debt, and the difficulties that the families have gone through, we pray for them, we extend our prayers to them, and we tip our hearts to them. The principles for which they staked so much are strong in our hearts, and we will fight to the bitter end to make sure that our country, one, they have demonstrated ultimate love, and for which they have staked everything, their lives, their liberty, and the joy and the happiness of their families for our sake. So we honor them and we pray for them, and then they are comrades in our hearts forever. This is a struggle, MB, that we must fight. It's not a struggle that we can avoid. It's not a struggle that will be easy. It's not a struggle that will be without consequence. But it's one that we will prevail. Let no one be discouraged. And then let no one find a way to discourage others. Whatever you can do, redouble it, triple it, do whatever you can do. Don't tire, don't be exhausted, don't be discouraged, and don't set yourself up for disappointment. We are right, the tyrant is wrong. We will win, he will fail. The only future he has is one of reckoning. He will have a day of reckoning with the Gambian people, and when he dies, as he surely will, he will have a reckoning with our Creator, to whom we are all ultimately responsible. But this is a duty MB, that we cannot subcontract to others. Everybody can and should try to do something. Do not say that this is other people's problems. Do not say there is very little I can do. Do not say that there is nothing I can do. Do not say that I don't have faith in other people. Then have faith in yourself. Do what you can on your own behalf. Let us also nurture the spirit of unity also. Let us understand that disagreements are part of national discourse. Let us also accept that we must be tolerant of the views of others even if we disagree with them. Let us also not be oblivious to the realities that we face. If somebody is unwilling to be recruited in the fight, leave them alone. If somebody is willing to join the fight, encourage them, pray for them, support them, stand with them. This is where we stand. We cannot afford distraction, especially for those who are fully engaged. If somebody comes up with, and people do come up with endless schemes of distraction, and then with the way social media has amplified every single person's voice now, it is easy for one person to stir up trouble for the single purpose of maybe he wanted to distract a few other people who were otherwise focused on something that would be meaningful and that would be important. And the enemy is going to find ways to scatter us. He's going to find ways to make us feel like we are fighting a hopeless battle. There is no such thing called a hopeless battle when you are fighting for the very life of your country. We've seen civilizations where people have retreated in mountains and fought bitter battles for years, but in the end they always won. Ours will also come to a bitter fight. Let us be there for that fight. Let us not succumb to fear. Let us not succumb to being desperate. Let us always have faith that Allah knows what is in our hearts and that what we are fighting for is not for our own skin. It's for the good of our neighbors. It's for the good of our villages. It's for the good of our towns. It's for the good of our moms, our imams, and everybody who calls Gambia home. We are fighting because we think they deserve better. And that is something that requires a journey of all who are willing. And the key operative word is willing. The lack of participation of others should be a motivator, not a point of endless back and forth. If somebody does not want to join a battle, you do not recruit them in that battle. That is my philosophy, and I have found that to be useful. You could even respect them. You may not admire what they do, but then let them be. Let them not be at the center of your strategy. Your center of your strategy should be, how do you multiply your strength? How do you reach out to people? How do you explain yourself? And I think part of what you do here, MB, you bring us citizens, because we are regular citizens. We don't have any special status anywhere. We are just regular Joe. You bring us, and then we share whatever little ideas we have, and hopefully somebody can recognize their sense of duty in the conversations that you make, that it is part and parcel of all of our responsibilities to work hard and then save our country and do the right thing.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, uninterrupted, Mr. Karamba Touray on the conversation, the importance of having a discussion, citizens talking to one another. It's one of the most important things we can do as a nation. Part of the reason we're in a dictatorship today. We have a leader, a senior citizen, a responsible individual, detained illegally. The whole nation is watching. The reason for that part of it is because we have not learned to talk, to have a conversation with one another. We will continue to speak to Gambians. We will bring you Frederick Tendeng very soon, Mr. Seni M.K. Marena, other decent Gambians, to have that conversation so that when the time comes, when we find ourselves at that table where we're discussing much more important issues, national issues, that the conversation and the negotiations should be a lot easier. Karamba Touray, thank you so much for accepting an invite to the conversation. 21 years of fighting.
Yeah.
21 years of fighting. I just want, in closing, Talk to our sisters, our ladies that have been out there, the Karamba Revolution, the ones that have been raped, the ones that will be raped in the future. We have seen the role our women have played. To me, the women have played a much stronger and braver role. If the men had played the role that the women had played in the last month, I think the dictatorship would have come to an end. They left their kids at home, their husbands, and came out and demonstrated. They were sprayed with bullets, many of them in jail. Talk to that woman, that young woman, and tell them it's worth it. It's worth fighting for the Gambia.
Very well. Thank you again, MB. Since this is the concluding remark, I want to thank you for inviting me and for holding these conversations with a cross-section of our society. I pray for Allah to give you the energy and the wisdom to carry on, and for all the other good work that you do, and the seriousness you take your citizenship with. We are all very grateful for the constant exertion of effort that you exhibit throughout this process, and I commend you, and I encourage you to continue on that path. The women, I think the future of our country is going to be shaped largely by women. I think there is a generational shift in how we perceive women in general in our society, and specifically in the political life of our country. Within our party, I can tell you that the overall strength of the women is larger than that of the men, both in terms of to sort of leadership, but also just the general grit of the party. The heartbeat of the party is the women, both at the organizational level, and then the current acting leader of our party is a woman, Ajiyam Sega, who is exercising effective executive control over the overall strategy on how to move forward in this battle. And he's been supported throughout the process by very strong women. And then, as you can see in the activism and then on the ground game itself on the streets, the women are the dominant forces on the ground. And I think Gambian men have a lot to learn from the cultural biases and then the other not so attractive aspects of how we had just looked at our women in terms of what they can do and how they can deliver in our society. So I am a very, 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 very strong proponent of the idea that us men need to retreat back now, and then let the women lead, and then we support them from in the roles that they assign us, so that they exercise the full control of the direction of the country, and then to reshape it in a manner that reflects, because they are the custodians of our value. The women are the custodians of the values of our culture, of our society. So I have been very, very impressed, and then I know that we will see more and more strong women emerge in the coming short and intermediate period. And I think the next republic in the Gambia would run largely, if not by a woman directly, certainly largely by women, because they understand what we face, and I think they are the forefront of finding solutions for it. And we need to change and support the strength and the vitality that they have brought or continue to bring in the transformation of our society. We cannot put them in the box that we put them even 20 years ago. It makes no sense. And then our country needs them, and then they are proven leaders. So that I am firmly in the feminist bandwagon when it comes to what I see them capable of. We would encourage more women, especially people with experience, people that are highly educated, to come and also risk something, because leadership requires the testing of the mettle. You have to be prepared to risk something, and then political life in Gambia, MB, you need to be prepared to be inconvenienced. You need to be prepared to be, part of, to you put your resources in there, and then the physical aspect of it also. You need to be out there, and then you need to be willing for people to burden you. So we want more and more strong women that have access to knowledge and resources to come forward and be part of the effort. Don't just stay on the sidelines, but come and then lead the change, and then we'll follow you. So I am very, 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 very happy with what they are doing. And then in the diaspora too, a lot of the energy is driven by women who are very active in the media. Fatou Kamara and Mama Linger and your Ao Tukulor himself and other people who really they show passion, they show vitality, and then they know precisely what they are doing. So this is kind of the new engine, and we need to see that our society is changing. And when your society is changing, MB, you need to embrace change. And then you put in ways where you can harness all this energy, all this effort. The men have had their run, MB, and we've made a mess of situations. I think it's time we kind of gradually step back, not to disengage, but let our women lead this thing, and then we kind of, jafundu on the side and work with them. So that's what I want to do. And thank you very much, and my regards to you and your family, and God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Karamba, for coming to the conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Karamba Touray on the conversation, uninterrupted. I really wanted Karamba to come today and really speak to us at length, which he did an excellent job. But we must all remind ourselves that as we speak right now, Yahya Jammeh is spending millions and millions of dollars celebrating his so-called birthday, whilst we have innocent Gambians languishing in jail, some getting raped, tortured. We as a nation have a moral obligation, a moral duty to stand up and fight for the ordinary Gambian, like Mr. Touray stated. With that said, we will continue to bring you decent Gambians that believe that the dictatorship in the country must stop. It must go, and for the rule of law to be restored back into the Gambia. Thank you, and good evening from Los Angeles.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to the conversation. It was a difficult discussion with Karamba. It has been a tough conversation, but we must continue. Good night.